Good afternoon, evil, and I will tell you one story of a good viewing. The calendar on the dusty marble mantel read April 12, 1962, though the McAllister house had lain silent so long it might as well have been carved from bedrock. I arrived at dusk, the last amber rays of sunlight slanting through shattered panes and illuminating moth-eaten tapestries in muted gold. My boots clicked on warped floorboards as I carried a single leather satchel down the central hallway, past a grand staircase whose balusters were gnawed by rot. Each breath I drew tasted of mold and cold decay, as though the very air resented my presence. I'd come to this forsaken place seeking solitude, a refuge from city lights and suffocating deadlines. But the moment I crossed the threshold, I felt a pulse beneath the house, as if it were a living thing breathing its last. Rumors clung to the McAllister name like cobwebs. The patriarch vanished one stormy night. Servants fled in terror. Neighbors whispered of impossibly bright lights dancing through attic windows long after midnight. I'd scoffed at such tales until the first whisper. On my second night, at exactly 2:17 a.m., I awoke to an unnatural chill pooling at my shoulders. The moon, hidden by drifting clouds, left the room in blackness deeper than any city alley. And yet I felt eyes upon me. My lantern lay cold on the bedside table. From somewhere beyond the door came a soft click, like a clock unhinging. Then, a voice so faint it might have been the wind. "Samuel!" My heart seized. I lay paralyzed as the whisper grew more insistent, threading through my skull like ice-coated wires. Images flashed behind my lids. A laughing boy tethered to a carousel, a woman's face twisted in grief, a swing knocked askew in a sunlit yard. The house itself seemed to lean closer, eager to unveil its secrets. The next morning, I found the whispering doll seated on a velvet-backed chair in the parlor. I had not placed it there. Its porcelain face was cracked in countless places, each fissure radiating outward from a perfect heart-shaped chip in its forehead. Its eyes, one a stormy gray, the other the color of frozen lake water, gazed at me with an intelligence both childlike and ancient. The doll's dress, once pure white lace, hung in tattered rags, marred by ochre stains that resembled dried tears. I carried it to my workroom, a former nursery, and set it on a small oak table beneath a fractured skylight. Bookshelves lined the walls, their volumes swollen with mildew. Diaries of a lost child, physicians' ledger books, portrait albums depicting generations of stern McAllisters with hollow eyes. I ran my fingers over a leather-bound journal dated 1898. In looping script, a caretaker wrote of voices from beneath the floor and the little one who listens. That night, I sat cross-legged on the nursery floor, lantern at my side, daring the doll to speak again. The silence stretched until my nerves trembled. Then, a tiny gust rustled the pages of the ledger, and the doll's head swiveled toward me with an audible click. Its painted lips curled into a knowing smile. A whisper slithered into my mind. "Tell me about the drowning." My blood ran ice-cold. The drowning, my darkest secret, had haunted me nightly for a decade. The memory came unbidden. Sun glittering on Lake Michigan, the frantic bobbing of a drowning friend, my own hands clawing at empty air. Guilt had driven me to sink his body beneath the pier's planks and lie to the police that I'd found him already gone. The horror of that night had fueled years of sleepless nights and silent prayers. Yet now this doll, this vessel of porcelain and shadow, knew everything. I tried to block it, to deny the memory, but its voice grew louder, more insistent, reciting every detail of my cowardice. "You turned away. You watched him die." Each word echoed in my chest like a hammer blow. I stumbled backward, knocking lantern and ledger to the floor. Flames danced wildly, casting grotesque shadows that writhed across walls plastered with peeling wallpaper. There, dimly lit by the upturned lantern, was the air vent high on the far wall, once a simple conduit for stale air. Now its grill was ajar, and beyond it I saw a slender, pale hand, tiny, childlike, slide through the slats. I fled the nursery, heart hammering, and raced down the hallway. Portraits I'd passed a dozen times before now leered at me in the lantern's glow. Generations of McAllister children, each clutching an identical doll, dressed in lace with that same heart-shaped chip. Their painted smiles seemed to mock me, accusing me of trespass. At the foot of the grand staircase, I paused. Beneath the balusters, a trail of dust-soaked footprints led to the cellar door. They were the size of a child's, perfect and unbroken. A sense of cold dread trickled through me as I knelt to inspect a footprint. The toes curled upward, as though scratching at the wood. Above me, a child's giggle echoed, soft, lilting, and hideously distant. It danced across the walls and vanished. Instinct drove me to slam the cellar door shut, but the latch shook violently, as if something below was forcing it open. The doll's whisper, muffled and distant, seeped up through the cracks. "Come down where the lost ones sleep." I retreated to my makeshift bedroom, heart rattling like a loose hinge. Sleep eluded me. In the wavering lantern light, I noticed new cracks radiating from the chip in the doll's forehead. Fresh fissures that glinted with red, as though the porcelain wept blood. A soft drip 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 echoed on the wooden floor. My breath caught when I realized it was my own blood, pooling at my feet in a perfect little circle. I almost collapsed then, but forced myself upright. Tomorrow, at dawn, I would pry open that cellar door. I would face whatever lay beneath. For I knew now that the whispering doll was not merely a vessel of secrets but a key, a grotesque oracle demanding confession and sacrifice. I extinguished the lantern. Darkness swallowed the room, and as I lay awake in that oppressive blackness, I could swear a tiny form settled at the foot of my bed, its glass eyes reflecting the moonlight that filtered through the shutters, waiting patiently for sunrise and the horrors it would bring. Dawn's pale light seeped through cracked shutters, painting the nursery in wan hues of decay. I rose with every muscle trembling, the ache of last night's terror coiling through my veins. My lantern lay dark at the bedside, its glass cracked from where I'd thrown it in panic. I forced myself to grasp it, struck a fresh match, and watched the flames snap to life. Every inch of the nursery felt alive with menace. The dolls strewn across the floor seemed to shift in the lantern's glow, tiny joints creaking, limbs twitching. Their empty eye sockets tracked my movements as I crept to the far wall, where the aged cellar door gaped beneath the staircase like a yawning mouth. The latch hung loose. Someone, or something, had already begun to pry it open. I steeled my resolve and descended. The stairs groaned underfoot, each step a reminder of the house's ancient bones. A damp chill drifted upward, carrying the stench of earth and rot. By the time I reached the bottom, the lantern's light was swallowed by darkness so complete it felt solid. My breath puffed white in the frigid air as I nudged the door shut behind me, then wedged a length of broken chair leg beneath the handle. The passage beyond was narrow as a coffin, lined with rough-hewn stone dripping with condensation. My lantern beam danced along walls scarred by claw marks, hundreds of gouges carved in frantic slashes. In places, dark patches of mold formed grotesque shapes, hunched figures, twisted faces, open mouths aghast in silent screams. At the passage's end stood a heavy oak door festooned with iron studs. Its surface was carved with symbols that pulsed in the lantern's glow. Spirals, inverted crescents, and the Ouroboros that I'd first seen in the nursery. I pressed trembling fingers to the carvings. Each groove was slick with something warm. I recoiled as a whisper slithered through my mind. Blood is the key. Horror clenched my gut. Blood, my blood, had dripped from the doll's cracks. My pulse thundered as I pressed a fingertip into a groove. Hot liquid welled instantly, spilling over my skin. I tasted copper on my lips as I wiped it on my coat. The whisper came again, urging me to smear it across the door's iron studs. With shaking hands, I dragged crimson lines along the metal, and the door shuddered. A grinding roar split the silence, and the oak door creaked inward. Beyond lay a circular chamber lit by a single shaft of light descending from a grated opening overhead. Stone benches ringed the room like jagged teeth. At the center lay a pit, its walls slick with damp earth. From its depths rose a chorus of muffled wails, low, desperate sobs that resonated in my bones. I stepped forward, every nerve afire. The lantern revealed a narrow ledge circling the pit. On the outer wall, countless dolls hung by fraying ropes around their necks. Dozens of them, each identical to the whispering doll but more tattered, their porcelain shattered. Their glass eyes stared sightlessly downward, and their mouths sat open in frozen terror. My lantern flickered and died. Heart pounding, I struck another match. In its brief flare, I saw movement at the pit's edge. A pale hand reached up, skeletal fingers brushing the stone. From below came a choked sob and the words. My own voice, slurred with grief and fear. "Samuel, help me." I recoiled in disgust. The darkness pulsed, and the voice multiplied. A dozen voices wailing in unison, each pleading for release. My knees buckled as I realized what this chamber was. A tomb of lost children, sacrificed to some ancient hunger. And above them, the whispering doll had been my guide, leading me here as predator to prey. A single porcelain foot tapped the ledge behind me. I whirled, lantern beams slicing the gloom, to find the whispering doll perched atop a stone bench. Its eyes glowed with unholy light. Its dress had regained pristine whiteness, as if cleansed of decades of sin. In its tiny hand it held a small knife, the blade stained red. The doll's head cocked. A whisper echoed through the chamber, this time in my own quaking voice. "Now, Samuel, it is your turn to join them." I lunged forward, but the air gripped me like chains. My lantern clattered to the floor, snuffing the match's flame. In utter darkness, I felt the doll's presence close in, a porcelain heartbeat thrumming against my ankle. A whisper caressed my ear. "Cut the rope!" Panic slammed into me. I fumbled for the lantern, found it, and relit the wick. Light flooded the chamber once more, and the doll stood at the pit's brink, blade raised. Around the rim, the hanging dolls swayed gently, as if breathing. Their necks were taut threads ready to snap. I locked eyes with the whispering doll. Its chipped forehead gleamed, and the fissures wept fresh blood. My own blood. Beneath me, the wailing reached a crescendo. I realized with a sickening clarity. Each doll below was once a child, now bound to the house's hunger, and I was the final offering. Summoning every shred of will, I hurled the lantern at the doll. It toppled backward into the pit, the glass shattering. Flames erupting as oil from the lantern ignited the dry rope fraying above. The doll vanished beneath the blaze. I stumbled to the pit's edge, heart pounding, and watched as fire licked the ropes, severing them one by one. The corpses of tiny dolls slipped into the darkness with muffled thuds. But the pit did not fall silent. A hideous, gurgling laugh rose from below, and clawed hands tore at the stone. I scrambled back as the earth shivered. The grate above clanged as something massive broke through. A blast of fetid air gusted upward, extinguishing my lantern and scorching my face with the stench of decay. In the darkness, a hulking shape emerged from the pit's edge. A giant, malformed doll, its porcelain body cracked and sewn back together with rusty wire, eyes burning like coals. Its maw was a jagged hole, and from it poured 1,000 whispered voices, each a tortured echo of the children's wails. I staggered backward, mind ablaze with terror. The creature raised one monstrous arm, and I understood. This was the house's true heart, an ancient hunger given form by every secret the whispering doll had stolen. Adrenaline eclipsed fear. I seized a broken bench leg, hefted it, and the chamber erupted in a cacophony of shrieking whispers as I brought it down on the creature's knee. Bone and porcelain shattered in a gout of crimson. The thing howled, a sound so agonized it fractured the air. Flames flickered in the grate above. Dawn's light seeped in, scattering my terror in shards of gold. The creature reeled, unsteady, as though sunlight burned it. With a roar it lunged, but I held firm, striking again and again until its head split open like an overripe fruit. Silence fell. The pit stilled. The hanging dolls hung limp, their ropes charred and broken. I stood amid the wreckage, chest heaving, lantern flame guttering. Dawn filled the chamber now, a soft, forgiving light. I stumbled upward through the passage, emerging on the servants' landing. The house was still. No whispers drifted through halls, no doll's silhouette at the window, only the distant crowing of a rooster outside. I left without looking back. On the porch at sunrise, I turned once, expecting to see that porcelain face watching me from the window. But the McAllister house stood empty, silent as stone. Behind me, a faint giggle drifted on the breeze, too distant to locate, yet impossible to ignore. My lantern swung at my side, its flame barely flickering, as though uncertain if it should burn again. And somewhere deep within those ancient walls, I swear I heard the faintest whisper, "We will meet again." Thank you very much and see you all in the next video.